idols. All right, so we're living in a time where idol worship, the worshiping of many religions, and atheism are at the highest points they have ever been in the world's history. Why is this? Why is this the case? And how did we get here? With so many religions, so many gods, and so many interpretations of how to worship whom the world calls God, many people get confused, discouraged, and have become atheists or agnostics. Hope I'm saying that word right. Right? You also have those that say we all are worshiping the same God. We just worship him in our own way and culture. You guys ever heard that one before? Mm-hmm. Right? In this lesson, we will see that there are many gods, and that these gods, or these are the gods that the Gentiles serve, but there's only one true power that created all. The power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now let's get Psalm chapter 96, verse 1, and just give people a little time to get there. Yes, sir. And when you're there, just say, Khan. All right?
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Book of Psalms, chapter 96, verse 1, reading from 1 to 5 here. O sing unto the Most High a new song. Sing unto the Most High all the earth. Sing unto the Most High. Bless his name. Shew forth his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the heathen, his wonders among the people. For the Most High is great and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods.
He's supposed to be what?
Feared above all gods.
Go on.
For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Most High made the heavens.
But it was the Most High who made the heavens. Right? So, let's get 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and we're going to get 19 to 20.
Family, again, when you're there, say Khan, please.
Yeah.
All right. Book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 10, verse number 19. What say I then, that the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything? But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to the Most High. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils. Ye cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of the Most High's table and the table of devils.
Right, and this is one of the areas where we, sometimes we can confuse ourselves to think that we can partake in both, right? But we can't sit at the Most High's table and sit at the table of these devils, or who the nations worship, right? And this goes into their holidays, holidays which are really holy days, because I and Y, they're interchangeable, right? Is really the things that get us, so to speak, where we compromise, so to speak, right? So when someone calls you over and says, hey, I got this party, Christmas party going on, I got this party going on, and a lot of times those are the areas that we compromise in. But what we have to understand is that by us partaking in those things, it's really by those means that we start to open up ourselves to be demonically or spiritually possessed by these spirits. These feast days are really serve as an entry point. And that's why they make it so festal to get everybody to participate in it. Because really it's an entry for these spirits now to come in, That's why if you notice, they'll pray over the food. They'll do all these different things or sacrifice the food to a deity. And a lot of these things, a lot of people don't know that it's really happening behind scenes, right? Or we know it and we downplay it and be like, I'll use one example. I always use this one. Oh, I'm just going to buy halal meat because they drain the blood and pray over it. So they pray over it. But you also know that the God they're dealing with and the God you're dealing with is two different gods. But we downplay that because, on face surface, it feels better. Right? When I'm like, at least when I go to the grocery store, not saying anyone, because I'm going to say we have power to control where we buy our meat from, by all means. But many of us, we don't. But I'm going in there and I'm like, I need to pray over all of it. Because here what? One's calling on Allah and praying over my meat in the name of Allah. The other people them are doing it and they're doing it in the name of Yahweh. You know it already. Right? And then you see a little kosher sign in the corner. It's okay. You know what I mean? So no matter how we look at it, but sometimes we can deceive ourselves thinking one or the other is better, right? But it's very important, especially in these last days, where we draw that line. We're only dealing with the Most High, right? And we're praying for those that are still caught up in the worshiping of these fallen deities, right? So it says here, the gods of the Gentiles are idols, and for every idol they make, there is a god attached to it. But the Most High, the God that created the universe and everything in it, is to be feared above all the lesser gods. Paul tells us that the idol gods that the Gentiles sacrifice to are demons. So where did these gods or demons come from? Let's get Genesis. And I said a lot of this will be for us, a lot of us will be, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Recap. Basic truth 101s. Right? So let's get where the demons came from. Let's get Genesis chapter 6, 1 to 4.
Okay, Genesis 6, verse number 1. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of the Most High saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Most High said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of the Most High came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown.
Men of renown, right? So these became the rulers. Let's get the next slide. Let's look at the word renown, right? So these were the men of widespread reputation. These were the gods controlling everything before the flood, right? We know that through this relationship, what they also gave to man was technology. And, you'll find that this practice still goes on to this day. I was watching a documentary on Steve Jobs. And right before he made the computer, where do you think he went? Anybody knows where he went right before he made the computer? India. He went to India and met a shaman and got insight about this computer. And we could see that through the discovery of the computer, because without the computer, you can't have the mark of the beast. So it was very vital, very important, this information that this demon would give him to fit, with the overall plan to one day incorporate the clay with the iron. Right? But anyways, so these were the men, the gods of the world, these fallen angels that came down, right? Let's continue. Let's go. We're going to go book of Enoch, and we're going to go chapter 6.
All right. Book of Enoch, chapter 6, verse number 1. And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters.
Right? This is speaking about exactly what we read in Genesis. Go on.
And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw that they saw and lusted after them, and said one to another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children.
Right? So these angels that the Bible refers to as watchers, their job was to watch over mankind. That was their job. Right? Go on.
I'm going to skip the names. And blank, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together, and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And blank, who was their leader, said to them, I fear you will... Oh, that's the same slide.
Yep. Fast forward to the next slide. Yep.
Chapter 7, verse number 1. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one. And they began to go in unto them, and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them with charms and enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisition of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind.
Right? So because the earth was not there to sustain them, the Most High didn't make the earth for them. Pretty much they were eating beyond the portions that, beyond what the Most High created for man. Now you'll find in records, you know what the Most High did? Show you how merciful the Most High was, because he definitely gave the giants them a chance. There's certain records that said he actually fed them with manna to sustain them. Right? Go on.
And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones.
Right? So this is where we get the technology of splicing. All these things were happening before the flood. Let's continue. Book of Enoch. We're going to go chapter 15.
Enoch 15:8. And now the giants who were produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men and from the holy watchers in their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of the earth, which are born upon the earth, on the earth shall be their dwelling. Chapter 19.
Right? Now let's continue to read here. We're just going to get a little bit more. And their job is to do what? And these spirits afflict.
And these spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger.
Right? So, and this is what I talk about all the time. These demons, we know they take no food, but they hunger. Go on.
But nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them.
Right? So they still have their sensations, but they have no bodies to feel these sensations. And this is why they need hosts. This is why they needed to build a society. It's kind of like, the Matrix, how the computers, they needed the batteries. They needed the batteries to keep themselves fed. So they made a society that incorporated all idolatry, witchcraft, all these different things, because from a child's born and from They open them up to all the traditions of men. That's really a new vessel that a spirit can now live off of and feed off of. And this is really the whole purpose of what these idols serve as. Right? Let's continue. Yes, going to 19 now.
All right.
And let me read the commentary, right? So during the time before the flood, there were angels who are the sons of God. They left their heavenly habitation, and we can read this in the book of Peter, 1 Peter, came into the earth and dwelt with the daughters of mankind, impregnated them. The women would give birth to the children of angels, who were to be called giants. The book of Enoch lets us know that the giants, or Nephilim, would stand 300 ells, or 3,000 ells, which is equivalent to 6,000 feet tall. So to call them giants would be an understatement. Notice how they would become men of renown, meaning that their fame would be widespread throughout all the land during the time and all the ages that would follow after their death. Long before there was even any Greek and Roman mythology, these giants ruled in renowned cities like Atlantis and were worshipped after the flood in the Babylonian and Egyptian empires. In the time of Jared, the 200 angels that left their heavenly habitations would become the gods or rulers. I'm throwing in that word as well. And goddesses, their children, the giants, would become the demigods, right? So this is where we get this whole understanding of demigods. Like when you look at Roman mythology, Greek mythology, Zeus being the head god, him having children, and then all these children, Hercules and all these things are the demigods. This is where all this comes from, right? In the days of Jared, as I said, 200 angels. Let me read that again. They would become the demigods, and these would be the deities that the nations would worship throughout all the ages. So we're still worshiping these deities to this day, right? They penciled them in cartoons. They made cereals out of them. You know, it's all over, right? Let's get more proof on this. Like I was just thinking, I know for us, Hercules back in the days, those were the shows. Greek mythology was big during my time. Hercules, Xena, right? I used to watch those shows. I knew, it's sad because there's a time where I knew more about Greek mythology than Bible theology. Right? It was so embedded. Let's continue though. Let's get Book of Enoch.
Enoch 19, verse number 1.
Right? All of us grew up with Jack and the Beanstalk, no?
Yeah.
Right?
Widespread.
And then you know what I was thinking? Because it was talking about the cities of Atlantis and all these things. And you see, man, they're still looking for these lost cities. Right? Because they understand that the technology that were in these cities were so advanced. But then I start thinking, because the Bible tells us that the coming of man shall be as in the days of Noah. And in the days of Noah, believe it or not, they were very sophisticated. They were more sophisticated than the day and age that we are into now. Right? And this is why they're still looking for these cities just to find the technology. Right? I mean, let's just think about the 8 wonders of the world. There's certain things they can't explain how we're, like the Pyramid of Giza. They still cannot explain how that was built. They don't even have a theory. They're like, okay, we got a theory on how to move a one stone. But then how do they move the one stone in a desert with nothing around it? You know what I mean? So there's so many different theories, but yet they still can't duplicate this yet. Right? So we're heading in a time of advanced technology. That's what it was during the time of Noah, believe it or not. Right? Let's continue though.
And here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Here shall they stand, till the day of the great judgment in which they shall be judged, till they are made an end of. And the women also angels who went out become sirens.
Right? Should become sirens. Everyone know what a siren is? Mermaids. Do we still got people worshiping mermaids? In fact, they brought out a new edition of mermaid recently, right? And she's an Israelite mermaid. They're really trying to please to a certain audience now. But the same thing, right? In ancient thing, they would have actual statues or idols of sirens, right? Now they just put it in TV show. They had a whole TV show on sirens, right? Let's get the Greek mythology understanding of what a siren is.
Mythology on sirens in the Greek mythology were dangerous creatures who lured nearby sailors with their enchanting music and singing voices to shipwreck on the rocky coast of their island. According to the Greek Neoplatonist philosopher Proclus Plato, said there were three kinds of sirens: the celestial, the generative, and the purificatory. The first were under the government of Zeus, the second under of Poseidon, and the third of Hades. When the soul is in heaven, the sirens seek, by harmonic motion, to unite it to the divine life of the celestial host, and when in Hades, to conform the soul to infernal regimen. But when on the earth, their only job to produce the sea is emblematic. Sirens were believed to combine women and birds in various ways. In early Greek, represented as birds with large women's heads, bird feathers, and shaggy feet. Later, they were represented as female figures with the legs of birds, with or without wings, playing a variety of musical instruments, especially harps and lyres. The 10th century Byzantine Encyclopedia Suda says that from their chests up, sirens had the form of sparrows, and below they were women, or alternatively, were with little birds with women's faces. Little birds with women's faces, like, yeah. Birds were chosen because of their beautiful voices. Later sirens were sometimes depicted as beautiful women whose bodies are seductive. The first century Roman historian Pliny the Elder discounted the sirens as pure fable, although Dion, the father of Clearchus, a celebrated writer, asserts that they exist in India and that they charm men by their song, and having first lured them to sleep, tears them to pieces. In his notebooks, Leonardo da Vinci wrote of the siren sings so sweetly.
Now let's stop there, right? I think we get the point. Now, they portray sirens as, you know how you do that, right? That Little Mermaid song, right? You guys don't mind me, I like the movie. It's a good movie. Growing up, right? So they give you that one. But then in real life, these things want to take you to pieces. So you can imagine the setup. Right? You're there saying, that was my friend. I seen a mermaid. And there's people that have actually cited these things. I remember there was a video, Black Family, the Greek islands. And the person come out at night, stay away from them. Don't go close to the water, basically. Right? So these things really do exist. And the book of Enoch tells us they exist.
That's a documentary on Rumble. The same people that did the COVID video. So there's a documentary of the sirens on Rumble. The same people that did the COVID, but died suddenly. So you guys want to watch it?
Right. So let's continue though. Book of Enoch. And let's go to the next slide. And I'm going. Yeah, let's continue. Book of Enoch, chapter 80.
Enoch chapter 80, verse number 6. And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them. And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and the thoughts of those on the earth shall err concerning them, and they shall be altered from all their ways. Yea, they shall err and take them to be gods.
Right? So the Bible, Book of Enoch, is telling us that eventually come a time where they would start to worship the Illuminatis, right? The stars in the heavens, all the luminaries, and eventually through that they would be led astray, right, in the last time. Now, if you're familiar with, Book of Jasher, a lot of the extra biblical texts, you'll realize is that, and even in the Bible, let me just keep it in the Bible. When they were looking for Christ, how did they find him? It was the stars. So they understand, and even when they're looking for Moses, even when they're looking for Abraham, you had, I can't even say their names right now, there's the guys that look up at the stars, the astrologers, thank you, right? They looked up at the stars, and they saw a child be born that would save the Hebrews. So they're very in touch with the heavenly, what the Bible calls the heavenly tables, right? So they understand this. Eventually, the very thing that they put their trust in is going to be the very thing to deceive them, right? And this is what Enoch's talking about, how they would start to worship the stars and whatnot, not understanding that these have a purpose to lead the unrighteous astray, right? But let's continue. We're going to Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 2. So Enoch, who saw everything, beginning and the end, prophesied that eventually they would start to serve the host of heavens. Let's get Deuteronomy 17, verse 2 to 3.
Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse number 2. If there be found among you within any of thy gates, which the Most High thy power giveth thee, man or woman, that hath wrought wickedness in the sight of the Most High thy power, and transgressing his covenant, and had gone and served other gods, and worshipped them, either the sun or moon, or any of the hosts of heaven, which I have not commanded.
Right? Now, did we end up doing this? Yes. Right? Where can we find this in the Bible where we did that? And what were we doing? So the Most High warned us about this very same thing. Right? And yet in the book of Ezekiel, we turn around and we're doing the very same thing. Where in Ezekiel, where the Most High is showing Ezekiel through the vision, and what he saw men with their backs towards their temple, facing the sun and worshiping the sun. So the Most High warned us about this, but yet it's the very same thing that our forefathers end up doing when it's all said and done. Right? Now I want to bring this up to my modern time. Because you would think, with all of us knowing that, we would have said, okay, we're not doing that again. But believe it or not, we had a group that was once part of us that went and started going into that practice of sun gazing, and believing they would get powers from the sun. There's really nothing new under the sun, and I'm highlighting that. Why? Because some of us, we will look back and be like, I'll never do that. But yet, some of the best of us end up falling to do that. Right? You want to say something?
Even today in the Catholic religion, there's on the altar they have this sun shape with the holy bread in it, right?
Yeah. I mean.
It's the same thing.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Right? And I say that why? Because really and truly what the cross actually really meant, represented, was the sun, the rays of the sun. That's what it represented. And that's why I said you'll see the same symbol in Egypt. Why? Because Egypt dealt with sun worship, Ra. Right? Romans dealt with Mithra. I mean, they just put a M-I at the beginning, it was still Ra. Right? But they dealt with it, and it was a god deity, a sun god. Right? So, it's all over. It's so embedded today. all had the same worship of worship. All of them did, right? But let's get them. Let's get solar deities. And we're going to look at solar deities.
Right, solar deity. A solar deity, also god or sun goddess, is a sky deity who represents the sun or an aspect of it, usually by its perceived power and strength. Pre-dynasty Egyptian believed Atum as the sun god and Horus as a god of the sky and sun.
Right? So Horus was known as a sun god. Right? Let's get list of luminary or lunar deities.
List of lunar deities. In mythology, a lunar deity is a god or goddess of the moon, sometimes as a personification. These deities can have a variety of functions and traditions depending upon the culture, but they are often related. Some form of moon worship can be found in most ancient religions.
Right? So a lot of ancient religions have moon worship in it. Can somebody give me one? And how do you know that? Because what? They have the moon. You guys ever see that? They have the crescent, the moon crescent, right? And it's crazy because, okay, you'll see, especially during the time of Ramadan, you do see that symbolism posted up the moon and whatnot. But you know who I see it the most has it? The black Muslim. The black people who follow it. And Nation of Islam, right? And that you have a fraction of them. I don't know if they're or that's what they are, Moors, right? You guys seen them? They always pop up on my YouTube feed for some reason. Right? But you'll see them, they have the crescent moon on their head. And they'll be like, no, we're not dealing with no, the Muslim world should know one God. But yet they don't see that that's a luminary attached to their worship. Because the foundation, actually the history of who Allah was, and I'm kind of holding my tongue. I don't know why I'm holding my tongue, right? Because we need to shed light on these deities. But Allah or Allat, right, was a female deity pre-Muhammad, or I'm going to say in Persian mythology, because that's really what it stems from, Persian mythology, right? But Allah was one of the gods, right? And if you follow, there's a book that talks about, it's called Lucifer's Satanic Angels or something of that nature. But in that book, they give you the history, even coming out of Timbuktu, gives you the nature. That was one of the deities Muhammad tried to move, and they wouldn't allow him to take it out of the temple. So that deity was allowed to remain while all the 364 other gods, or 63 other gods, were removed. Right? But let's get it. Let's get Allah.
All right. The claim that Allah, the name of God in Islam, historically originates as a moon god worshipped in pre-Islamic Arabia, originates in early 20th century scholarship, most prominently advocated by American evangelicals from the 1990s. Moray argues that Allah was the name of a moon god in pre-Islamic Arabic mythology, the implication being that Allah, as a term of God in Islam, implies that Muslims worship a different deity than the Judeo-Christian one. The use of lunar calendar and the crescent moon imagery in Islam is said by some to be the origin of this hypothesis.
Right? So it hasn't really lost its origin. It still has, the hands are still a little bit murky, so to speak. Still in murky waters, right? Because as I said, they have the image of what it really is about. And it's about moon worship, right? Let's continue. So the book of Enoch shows us that the angels that sinned with women would lead mankind astray into sacrificing to their children, the Nephilim. who would after their death, to demons as God, just as Paul warned us. The woman who sinned with these angels would also become known as Cyrene. When we look at mythology, we see the Cyrene animal, and society would want us to write this all off as myth, right? All these things they would write off as myth. And I remember when I first came into the truth and started to understand this, it made me understand, because you know they always say behind every story there's a truth, or behind, I don't know if that's exactly how it says, but I'm saying all these stories had to come from somewhere, right? I used to always say like it just popped up in someone's head to write this. No, it had to be based off of something. And once I started to understand, for instance, you know, because a lot of these stories I was familiar with, for instance, in Greek mythology, they have Clash of the Titans. Mm-hmm. Clash of the Titans is this war between the giants, one fraction of the giants against another fraction of giants. But the Bible tells us what was happening there. That's when the Most High put the spirit of judgment upon them. So once I looked at it from the Bible, it was very easy to find the Bible in these mythology, in these stories that they were writing off as mythology, right? And they just, that was their way of, you know, downplaying it. Don't believe it if you hear it, right? But let's continue. Let's get Jasher chapter 7.
All right, in the book of Jasher.
And let me continue to read this. When we look at mythology, we see Cyrenes as part woman, part animal, and the society will want us to write them off as myth. However, Enoch also shows us that the fallen angels mixed different animal species together, whom in modern ages called dinosaurs, right? And this is, as I said, all the, you know, dinosaurs, all these things happened during this time period. But I'm going to tell you when, you know, the Most High always sends that confirmation. And I remember, and I don't know if you guys ever saw the last Jurassic Park. Mm-hmm. And in the last Jurassic Park, they made a special type of T-Rex. And the science, they were asking him, you know, how were you able to make this version of T-Rex? And he said through the taking of different DNAs, we were able to splice and put them all together using birds, using this. So once I heard that, it's exactly what the Bible was talking about. Modern day, we know that splicing DNA. Back then, they were talking about the mixing of the birds and the animals and whatnot. But this is what was being spoken about. And when I seen them speaking about this and also understanding that this technology is actually happening, they're redoing it. It didn't just end with your GMO vegetables or fruits and whatnot. They got animals that are actually mixing in, right? So one animal I remember was the Zyger. No, not the Zyger. They have the Zonky. They have the liger.
Tiger.
Right? So they got a bunch of animals, and the liger is pretty much a mix of tiger and lion. And what they're finding is that these animals are twice the size of their originally of who they come from, and they eat twice the amount, showing you that insatiableism, right? Let me digress. It's about the idols. Chapter 7, book of Jasher.
44, verse number 44. And Shinar, and he reigned securely.
Right? So we know this part, right? So eventually with all the idols, all that was going on with the Nephilim and whatnot, Mosai says, okay, you know what? Let me push the reset button. And flood washed about everything. Now, even though all was washed, a lot of writings were written on stone that survived and made it across over onto the other side. On top of that, the spirits of these giants also made it over to the other side, as well as a few giants were able to make it over to the other side. Og being one of those giants, right? And the Most High did that just to show that these things did happen, as a memorial to show that giants and all these things did happen to prevent those after the flood from doing the exact same things all over again. Clearly we failed, right? Let's continue.
And he fought with his enemies, and he subdued them, and he prospered in all, and his kingdom became very great. And all nations and tongues heard of his fame, and they gathered themselves to him, and they bowed down to the earth, and they brought him offerings, and he became their Lord and King. And they all dwelt with him in the city of Shinar. And Nimrod reigned in the earth over all the sons of Noah, and they were all under his power and counsel.
Right, so Nimrod would lead. Go on.
Next slide. And all the earth was of one tongue and words of union, but Nimrod did not go in the ways of the Most High, and he was more wicked than all the men that were before him, from the days of the flood unto those days. And he made gods of wood and stone, and he bowed down to them, and he rebelled against the Most High, and taught all his subjects and the people of the earth his wicked ways. And Mardon his son was more wicked than his father.
All right. So after the flood, new slate, clean start. Know they needed to know the right way they should choose. Even though spirits were still awkward, right? Who opened back the gates? Who opened back the factory? Nimrod. And I mean the factory that would be pump out the smoke to deceive the world again. Nimrod. Right? So, hiring a new employee, hired Nimrod. Nimrod opened up back the factories, start pumping back out the idols. Right? We know that to be a fact. Why? Because Abraham's dad was under him, and he had to watch 365, idols, showing he was pumping them out. Right? Let's continue.
Chapter 9, verse 5.
Verse 5.
Verse 5. And Abram was in Noah's house 39 years, and Abram knew the Most High from 3 years old, and he went in the ways of the Most High until the day of his death, as Noah and his son Shem had taught him. And all the sons of the earth in those days greatly transgressed against the Most High, and they rebelled against him, and they served other gods. And Abram...
Right, so while the rest of the world's going astray, Abraham, Noah, Methuselah, right? Or not Methuselah. Methuselah died before the flood. Shem, I mean. They were showing Noah, or Abraham, the ways of the Most High. Right? Go on. And it really shows you because truly, it's the same numbers we're dealing with. Few worshiping the true God, majority under Nimrod following Satan. Right? Go on.
And they forgot the Most High who created them in the earth, and the inhabitants of the earth made unto themselves at that time every man his god, gods of wood and stone, which could neither speak, hear, nor deliver. And the sons of men served them, and they became their gods. And the king of all his with all his household were then the first of those that served gods of wood and stone. And Terah had 12 gods of large size, made of wood and stone, after the 12 months of the year. And he served each one monthly. And every month Terah would bring his meat offering.
Right, so let me correct that. He had 12 gods for every day of the year. I said that the other way around. I said 360 gods, 12 gods. Go on.
Terah would bring his meat offering and drink offerings to his gods. Thus did Terah all the days.
Keep on going.
And all the generation were wicked in the sight of the Most High, and they thus made every man his god, but they forsook the Most High who had created them. And there was not a man found in those days in the whole earth who knew the Most High, for they served each man his own god, except Noah and his household, and all those who were under his counsel knew the Most High in those days.
Right? So you had all those through the idols, because now, as I said, Nimrod opened up back the factory, started pumping back all these idols. Everybody's now getting their idol. Why? Because, it seems like the latest thing's in. You know how, let's apply it to our times. Satan can market. So everybody there watching, I need one of those. Everyone goes, they cop their idol now. They got their idol post. Now, through these idols, spirits found their home. Now the spirits are in and working into the people. And if you notice, the spirits, the spirits are not making the people any better. It's making them worse. To now the whole point where they're like, forget the Most High. And in fact, it gets so bad that they're like, yo, we're going up there for him. Let's continue.
And the Most High gave Abram an understanding heart, and he knew all the works that generations were vain, of that generation were vain, and that all their gods were vain and were of no avail. And Abram saw the sun shining upon the earth, and Abram said unto himself, surely now this sun that shines upon the earth is God, and him will I serve. And Abram served the sun in that day, and he prayed to him. And when the evening came, the sun set as usual. And Abram said unto himself, within himself, surely this cannot be God. And Abram still continued to speak within himself, who is he who made the heavens and the earth? Who created upon earth? Where is he? And night darkened over him, and he lifted up his eyes toward the west, north, south, and east, and he saw that the sun had vanished from the earth, and the day became dark. And Abram saw that the stars and the moon before him. And he said, surely this is the God who created the whole earth as well as man. And behold, these his servants are gods around him. And Abram served the moon and prayed to it all that night.
Right? And I'm highlighting this. We're going through this just to show you that all of us, there's no man without sin other than Christ. Right? All of us were plugged in. Abraham, being as great as he was plugged into a house, born into a world full of idolatry. And even him had to go through the motions of figuring this out, like we're all doing. But he was able to figure it out and realize that these are not the gods that I should be serving, but there's something that created all these things. And eventually the Most High revealed himself to him. Right? Go on.
And in the morning, when it was light, and the sun shone upon the earth as usual, Abram saw all the things that the Most High Power had made upon earth. And Abram said unto himself, surely these are not gods that made the earth and all mankind, but these are the servants of God. And Abram remained in the house of Noah. There knew the Most High and his ways, and he served the Most High all the days of his life, and all the generation forgot the Most High and served other gods of wood and stones, and rebelled all their days. And King Nimrod reigned securely, and all the earth was under his control, and all the earth was of one tongue and words of union. And all the princes of Nimrod and his great men took counsel together, put Mizraim, Cush, and Canaan with their families. And they said to each other, come, let us build ourselves a city, and in it a strong tower, and its top reaching heaven, and we will make ourselves famed, so that we may reign upon the whole world, in order that the evil of our enemies may cease from us, that we may reign mightily over them, and that we may not become scattered over the earth on account of their wars.
Right? Now, who told them to be scattered upon the earth? Who told them to be scattered upon the face of the earth? The Most High did. Remember, after the flood, he told them to multiply and refill the earth? So these men are like, no, we're not doing that. We're building a tower, we're building a city, that way we're not dispersed. So the mindset was total disorder from what the Most High planned. So the enemies, because if you think about it, all of them were on one accord, one spoke one tongue. So who was the enemies they're speaking about? Right? Not to say they weren't warring amongst each other, but we can see when it came to this decision, All the families were there. So then who were the enemies they were talking about? It had to be the people of the Most High. Right? Those that were serving, even though it was a small remnant, those that were serving the Most High. Right? Continue.
And they all went before the king, and they told the king these words. And the king agreed with them in his affair, and he did so. And all the families assembled consisting of about 600,000 men, and they went to seek an extensive piece of ground to build the city and the tower. And they searched it in the whole earth, and they found none like one valley at the east of the land of Shinar, about 2 days' walk. And they journeyed there, and they dwelt there. And they began to make bricks and burn fires to build the city and the tower that they had imagined to complete. And the building of the tower was unto them a transgression and a sin. And they began to build it. And whilst they were building against the most high power of heaven, they imagined in their hearts to war against him and to ascend into heaven. And all these people and all the families divided themselves in three parts. The first said, we will ascend into heaven and fight against him. The second said, we will ascend into heaven and place our own gods there and serve them.
Right? So it got so out of control that they said, you know what? The same gods that we made with our own hands, we're going to go up there and fight against the living God and put our piece of wood up there. It's just the mindset behind it, right? Even though, as I said, we know that it was spirits leading them. This is the mindset of where they're going to lead the world masses, right? And this goes back into them eventually warring against the saint and his angel. The Christ warring against Christ. This was the first attempt here, right? Where they would make this tower to go into the heavens to fight against God. Brother K, you want to say?
Yeah, it's the same as it was in the beginning, same as it is now.
God.
Where these nations, they know, and they know about the living God and the wrath that he has. The evidence is all over the place, but yet they are still doing the things to fear to go back,
God,
So
right? But they made it to the point because, think about it, if I said, okay, guys, who wants to follow me to come fight against God?
You'll be surprised.
Cricket? No. You have some people that's real up, say, yeah, man, Satan, we're riding for it, right? But I'm saying, when it really gets to the point when you see Christ now.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? But then when you read it, it says they were scared, but yet they still went. So there has to be something in them that's pushing them to the point where, we're scared, but we can't. Even if we want to not turn around, we can't turn around and not fight against them. So right now, what they're doing, what they've been doing, and what they're finally doing is creating that super army of super soldiers to fight against Christ. Right? They've reopened up the NASA program recently. Right? So all these things are happening, but let me stick to the script. Go on.
And the third part said, we will ascend to heaven and smite him with bows and spears. And the Most High knew all their works and all their evil thoughts. And he saw the city and the tower which they were building. And the Most High said unto the 70 angels who stood before him, to those who were near to him, saying, come, let us descend and confuse their tongues, that one man shall not understand the language of his neighbor. And they did so unto them. And from that day following, they forgot each man his neighbor's tongue, and they could not understand to speak in one tongue. And when the builder took from the hands of the neighbor lime or stone, which he did not order, the builder would cast it away and throw it upon his neighbor, that he would die. And they did so many days, and they killed many of them in this manner. And the Most High smote the three divisions that were there, and he punished them according to their works and designs. Those who said, we will ascend to heaven and serve other gods, became like apes and elephants. And those who said, we will smite the heaven with arrows, the Most High killed them, one man through the hand of his neighbor. And the third division of those who said, we will ascend to heaven and fight against him, the Most High scattered them throughout the earth. And those who were left among them, when they knew and understood the evils which was coming upon them, they forsook the building, and they also became scattered upon the face of the whole earth.
Right? So they became scattered on the face of, and most of us, as I said, this is just, a recap for all of us, right? But I used to look at this, and just examine this, and this explains why, really and truly, majority, if not all the religions, are really the same. Because what they did is they took the worship that they had built while they were building the tower, and all they did is spread it throughout the places they were scattered. This is why the Assyrians had sun god worship, the Egyptians had sun god worship, the Babylonians had a form of it. But it's really the same worship, just in its different various forms and tongues. Right? Well, let's continue, and that's it we got there, right? Now I'm going a little bit further with this, and you can find this in the appendix of the Testament of Naphtali. And I'm picking this up so a lot of us can get a full content of what the Most High, when he came down with the 70 angels, I get a more idea, right? And you can find this in the Pseudographica. Hope I say the word right. But let me read this. It says, for at that time the Lord blessed, for at that time, blessed be he, or the Lord, blessed be he, came down from the highest heaven and brought down with him 70 ministering angels, Michael at their head. He commanded them to teach the 70 families which sprang from the loins of Noah 70 languages. For with the angels descended and did according to the command of their Creator. But the holy language, the Hebrew language, remained only in the house of Shem. And on that day, Michael took a message from the Lord and said to the 70 nations, to each nation separately, you know the rebellion you overtook, and the treacherous confederacy into which you entered against the Lord of heaven and earth. And now choose today whom you will worship, and who shall be your intercessor in the heights of heaven. Nimrod the wicked answered and said, for me there is no greater than he, speaking about the angel, that taught me and my people in 1 hour the language of Cush. In like manner also answered Put, Miriam, Tubal, Javin, Meshach, and every nation chose its own angel, and none of them mentioned the name of the Lord. Blessed be he. Right? So when the Most High, when they built that tower and whatnot, the Most High came down with the 70 angels, reprimanded, destroyed the city, but then he put a prince or an angel. You read in the Bible, you read of princes, and that's why Christ said he had to contend with the prince of Persia that was trying to prevent him from getting to him. These are speaking about the angel that's placed over the 70 different nations. Right? Brother Steve? This is from the Testament of Naphtali, but it's in the appendix of it. Right? You can get it after. I'll give it to you after. Right? But this is what the Most High did. Right? Let's continue. Let's get the next slide. And let's go a few slides. I want to go to Sirach, and then we'll come back to Enoch. This is why book of Sirach tells us this, right? For in the division of the nations of the whole earth, he set a ruler over every people. So that ruler that was set over every people was these angels, the 70 angels, that was placed over all the different families over the earth. Right? But Israel is the Lord's portion. Right? And what the Most High did is really and truly, there's another precept, I couldn't find it at the time, but really he set them over them to lead them astray. Right? Israel would be the only one he was dealing with that would be the light, and that would be to teach the other nations, but the other nations would be under these 70 shepherds that would lead them astray. But something happened. And what happened was Israel, we sinned. Right? And we're going to go back and get that. But let's go back to Enoch 89. So what would happen, Israel would sin. Right? And this is why we cannot trust the other nations. Why? Because the Most High put an angel over them to cause them to go astray. This is why we can't follow the other nations. Right? All the other nations are idols. Right? But when we sin now, the tables turned. Because part of our sin is we would be dispersed amongst the nations. And they will rule over you. So once we got dispersed amongst the nation, now the deity that's deceiving them would also start to deceive us as well. And this is written off in the book of Enoch. Because Enoch saw these things. And this is why, I highlight Enoch as a very important book. If you understand how to read it. But Enoch saw it all. To bear testimony against everything the Most High said from the beginning. So let's see what Enoch saw. And we're going Enoch 89, verse 59 to 63.
Right. And he called 70 shepherds and cast those sheep to them that they might pasture them.
Right, so who's the sheep? Israel is the sheep. So, these shepherds, the 70 shepherds, we know to be the 70 angels. And eventually the Most High says here what? I'm giving you to govern my sheep. Go on.
And he spake to the shepherds and their companions, let each individual of you pasture the sheep henceforth, and everything that I shall command you that ye do ye. And I will deliver them over unto you duly numbered, and tell you which of them are to be destroyed, and them destroy ye. And he gave order unto to them those sheep. And every excess and the destruction which will be wrought through the shepherds record, namely how many they destroyed, according to my command, and how many according to their own caprice, record against every individual shepherd all the destruction of he effects, and read out before me by number how many they destroy and how many they deliver over the destruction, that I may have this as a testimony against them, and know every deed of the shepherds, that I may comprehend and see what they do, whether or not they abide by my command which I have commanded them.
Right? Now, based on what we see, did these angels abide by the Most High's commandments? No. So Enoch chapter 90, I believe it was, tells you that they're going to get judged too. But basically, as I said, when we sinned and the Most High gave us over to the nations, what he gave us over to was the shepherd or the angel that was over that nation. And they had a task, because we know that the Most High used the nations as his beating stick to punish us, right? But these angels had the command. I'm going to give you some of them. Some of them destroy. Some of them you're supposed to spare. But clearly what happened is they started to destroy beyond number. Right? And we're in a time period where this final angel, Lucifer, is like, kill them all. But they went beyond what they were supposed to do. And they're going to get judged for this as well. Right? Let's continue. Deuteronomy 12:29. We'll get back on track.
Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 29.
Mm-hmm. Hey, just hold on.
All right. Deuteronomy 12:29. When the Most High thy power shall cut off the nations from before thee, whither thou goest to possess them, and thou succeedest them, and dwellest in their land, take heed to thyself that thou be not snared by following them, and after that they be destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after other gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do so unto the Most High thy power, for every abomination to the Most High which he hated have they done unto their gods. For even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods.
All right. Let's continue. Go in the book of Joshua.
All right. Book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse number 14. Now therefore fear the Most High, and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood.
Read that again.
Now therefore fear the Most High, and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood.
Right? So a lot of these gods, their origin, where they originated, is the same gods that were served before the flood. Right? And that's why, Joshua's asking, he's saying, put away the gods that your fathers served before the flood. Hold on, we all came from Noah. But he's showing you that this thing started from the beginning. Right? And they were just continuing the practice. It found its way beyond the flood. Go on.
And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Most High, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or gods of the Amorites, in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Most High.
Right, and we're faced with the same thing. This is the same exact thing that Paul was saying. He's saying, as for my house, we're serving the Most High, but we got to choose one. We can't have them both. Right, where Paul was like, you can't sit at both tables. And we're in that time, we're in that final hour, guys, where we really have to stand firm and really choose the side that we're sticking on. Because we're living in a time where death is rampant throughout the earth. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And it's only going to get worse before it gets better. So we need to take a stand and allow the little time that we have left and the little time we can do some good works to be those things that fight for us. Right? Go on.
And the people answered and said, Most High forbid that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For the Most High our power, He it is that brought us up out our fathers out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, and which did those great signs in our sight, and preserved us in all the way wherein we went, and among all the people through whom we passed. And the Most High drave out from before us all the people, even the Amorites which dwelt in the land. Therefore will we also serve the Most High, for He is our God. And Joshua said unto the people, Ye cannot serve the Most High, for He is an holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions nor your sins. If ye forsake the Most High and serve strange gods, then He will turn and do you hurt, and consume you, after He hath done you good.
Right, and that's the reality of why we can't play both sides of the field. Eventually, the Most High will consume you and destroy you, just because He cannot be the author of confusion. Right? Let's continue.
Verse 21, And the people said unto Joshua, Nay, but we will serve the Most High. And Joshua said unto the people, Ye are witnesses against yourselves, that ye have chosen you the Most High to serve Him. And they said, We are witnesses. Now therefore put away, said he, the strange gods which are among you, and incline your heart unto the Most High. Our God will we and His covenant with the people that and set them in statute and in order. And Joshua wrote these words in the law and took and said, the same Most High, for it hath heard it it shall be therefore to you, your God.
Just chapter 2, and let's get 2 to 8. And yeah, just time's sake. Let's
Judges
get
chapter 2,
Yes.
2 to 8. And Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Most High, died, being 110 years old, and they burned him in the border of his inheritance and Timnath-Heres in the mount of Ephraim on the north side of the hill of Gash. And also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Most High, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Most High, and served Baalim. And they forsook the Most High power of their fathers, which brought them out of the all other gods, of the people that were round about them, and bowed themselves unto them, and provoked the Most High to anger. And they forsook the Most High, and served Baal and Asherah.
Right? Baal and Asherah.
And the anger of the Most High against Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of spoilers that spoiled them, and he sold them into the hands of their enemies round about, so that they could not any longer stand before their enemies. Whithersoever they went out, the hand of the Most High was against them for evil, as the Most High had said, and as the Most High had sworn unto them, and they were greatly distressed.
Right? So we started serving Baal and his wife, Azareth. Let's get Baal. And I gotta use this for a second, but go ahead.
Okay, and Baal properly was a title and horrific meaning owner, lord, in the Northwest Semitic languages spoken in the Levant during antiquity. From its use among people, it came to be applied to gods. Scholars previously associated in theonym with solar cults and with a variety of unrelated patrons deities, but inscriptions have shown that the name Baal was particularly associated with the storm and fertility god Hadad and his local manifestations.
All right. Now, is Baal being served still in this earth? Anybody? Well, how is he being served? Now you'll find, and I've seen this, and I'll show you a small form of this, right? There's a movie, and I always talk about this movie.
Eyes wide shut.
Eyes Wide Shut. And in Eyes Wide Shut, they show you Mr. Baal is part of the family. So Mr. Baal, you have an elite family. Their great-great-grandfather met Mr. Baal a long time ago, and they had a bet. And through the bet, the grandfather won, so Mr. Baal gave him what his heart's desire. And they became responsible over the biggest toy company in the world. But every time somebody comes into the family, they got to play a game with Mr. Baal. And whatever Mr. Baal picks, whether it be a sacrifice, whether it be just a game of cards, that's the game they have to play to please Mr. Baal. So they have movies that show you that this is in corporate. But I remember I did a funeral a couple years back, and on the tombstone, it had Baal on it. And I was like, whoa. I was like, this person was just bold enough to show you the God they're dealing with, right? And it said Baal on there, right? But what's another way Baal is being worshipped in the earth?
The hiding of the name in like Jehovah.
Thank you. Yes, God, right? And for those that are in disbelief, I'm going to read here, and this is from a book. It's called The Witches' God, so it's pagans. And they got a whole play on this. And I was going to read this part of the play, and those who I've spoken to privately, I've shared this with you. And it says, Athens and goddesses, if you please, where we've been declared redundant, so meaning we lost all our power wherever Yahweh's in charge. Hera. So Hera was Zeus's wife. What? Zeus. But Yahweh has a wife himself. What happened to Azareth? So the pagans know Azareth, which we know was a deity, an idol, was married to Yahweh. But according to the Bible, who is she married to? Baal. Showing you that Baal and Yahweh are the same God. Now, on top of it, there's a documentary I sent it to Hudson, or I think I sent it to you. And it's the guy, he tries to murky, try to save it at the end. But he's telling you, the name of the video is, how did Yahweh, Baal, the hunter god, become the God of Israel? And he walks you throughout all the civilization to show you where Yahweh was. Now at the end, he's like, he became the God of Israel, so it's good now. But he walks you through to show you the origins of Baal and Yahweh. So, Baal just changed his name. Right? And then, some people know him by another name named Pan. Right? Now, guess what? They got us with Pan too. How they get us with Pan?
Peter Pan.
Peter Pan. Right? He's coming to take away the kids away from their parents into a never land. But that's exactly what Satan comes to do, to take the children away from their parents, to never let them grow up, to become real men, right? Only to sell it to the next kids that he's about to lure in to come to this place called Neverland. Satan, Peter Pan, is Pan the God, or the fallen God. So it's really all over in your stories. It's really all over. Well, let's continue. So we got Baal. Let's get to
Astar. All right. Hellenized is the Hellenized form of the Middle Eastern goddess Ashtoreth, Northwest Semitic, a form of Istar, East Semitic, worshipped from the Bronze Age through classical antiquity. Ashtoreth was connected with fertility, sexuality, and war. Her symbols were the lion, the horse, and the sphinx, a dove, and a star within a circle, indicating the planet Venus. Pictorial representations often show her naked. She has been known as the defiled morning and on, or even a star.
right. What's another name she goes by? Goddess? Right here?
Istar.
Istar, right? So where do we see Istar in society? Easter. But some people see her every day. Some people see her every day with their morning coffee. Starbucks. Right? She's the logo for Starbucks. I'm telling you, these idols are celebrities in this construct. Right? She also goes by Venus, so she even has a alleged planet named after her. Right? But Starbucks. I remember I was watching an episode of the show. It's called American Gods. Very graphic show. Don't recommend it for not everybody, kids especially. But in the show, they had a show, and it was Easter time. And Easter is mad. She's mad with Jesus. She's like, Jesus stole my day. And the whole episode, she's just upset with Jesus because now Jesus is getting all the shine that she used to get. And the only thing she gets is Monday where they hand out some eggs. Because the eggs, that's what the eggs represent, fertility. You see what I'm saying? So we all did it. All of us went to Easter, Esther service, right? Let's continue. So the Most High told Israel that he would cut off the nations that were before them, and not to inquire after the idols, gods that the nations served, or the Most High would cut Israel off like them. Every abomination under the sun was done under these gods. The Most High required Israel to offer sacrifice, burnt offerings, and clean animals, whereas the demons who represent these gods require sacrifice and burnt offerings of people. Joshua warned Israel to put away and not serve, I'm going to say, the fallen gods that the generation before served. A covenant was made, the Most High made a promise, and Israel made a promise. However, Israel did not keep their promise and started to serve the gods of the nations after Joshua's death. Right? Let's get 1 Samuel chapter 5, verse 7. So chapter 5, verse 1, and we're going to go 1 to 7.
1 Samuel chapter 5, verse number 1.
And I'm trying to bring it home. Let's go. We got a bunch of these gods to identify, but...
And the Philistines took the ark of the Most High and brought it from Ebenezer into Ashdod. When the Philistines took the ark of the Most High, they brought it into the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. And when they of Ashdod arose early on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the earth before the ark of the Most High. And they took Dagon and set him in his place again. And when they arose early on the morrow morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the ark of the Most High.
Right, you guys familiar with this story, right? So they got the Ark of the Covenant. You know, they wanted to put our God beside their God. And our God was like, you guys must not know who I am. And he would just tip over, through the Spirit, just tip over all the other gods and say, yo, let me stop. But, you know how we stay already. We're there, you know. Anyways, go on.
And the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off upon the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him.
You know what I'm saying? And it said only the stump left.
Only the stump.
Go on.
Therefore neither the priests of Dagon nor any that come into Dagon's house tread on the threshold of Dagon and Ashdod unto this day.
Right? So because of this, they don't even tread on that ground anymore. They're saying, man. Right? They were so scared when you read the entirety of the story that they had to send it back on a cart. And then say, yo, follow from behind and see. You know, if it makes it back to the land, we know it was their God. But Dagon, let's get Dagon. Dagon's a god still serving.
All right, Dagon is an ancient Mesopotamian and ancient Canaanite deity. He appears to have been worshipped as a fertility god in Elba, Assyria, Ugarit, and among the Amorites. The Hebrew Bible mentions him as the national god of the Philistines, with temples at Ashdod and elsewhere in Gaza. A long-standing association with a Canaanite word for fish, as in Hebrew, perhaps going back to the Iron Age, has led to an interpretation as a fish god and the association of merman motifs in Assyria art, such as the Dagon.
Right, so he's depicted as similar like a siren, right? But he would be the fish god, right? Now, where do we still see Dagon? The Pope's hat, right? And that's the given one. Put that up. I was going to put a picture of the Pope and I'm like, okay, everybody, they know that one already. What else do we see? Because we see him more often. Bro, you saw my slide, did you? Okay, yes. So everybody see, nowadays you got the Christian symbol with the fish, and it says Jesus in it. That's Deacon. That's what that represents. And yet you see so much believers with that sticker on the back of their car. Not understanding. But the plot gets even thicker. There's a time of the year where we have a feast to Dagon. Anybody know what time of the year that is? What time? Bad Friday. Right? We used to call it Good Friday, but it's Bad Friday. And for those that ever partook in that, it's pretty much we buy a box of fish, and for that day, all you're eating is fish and boiled fish. And I used to think, yo, honestly, I used to love it. God forgive me. I used to buy literally a box of fish and tell my mommy, please just fry up the fish. And she would fry up the fish, and I would have a plate of fish, and then my grandmother, she makes bun. We are set up. So she makes bun. So growing up, that's all we got is my grandma's bun and my box of fish. And I would just eat that religious and so good. Then I went to work one day. Portuguese guy comes in. And he brings his bun. I'm bringing my piece of bun. He's bringing his piece of bun. I said, I'm looking at his bun. I said, what? He has the eggs in it. Yeah, it's different because, when we do our stuff, we do it different. But that was the rude awakening that, hey, you know what? This Easter thing, this bun and fish thing, it's not a Caribbean thing. It's not our thing. And I realized all the other nations, they have their own form of it. And once I saw that, I'm not going to say I haven't had a bun. I haven't bought a bun during that time, so it makes it hard because I'm like, Grandma, put on the bun for me. But I can't eat it now. I can't buy it. Good Friday was the big thing, eating a lot of fish on that day, and the bun that links into Easter, right? So they got us on every level, right? We see how Deacon still worshiping the earth, right? Because of disobedience, key properties of Israelites, such as the Ark of the Covenant, fell into the hands of Israel's enemies. At the same time, having such an important piece of Israelite property, the Gentiles understood that it was a curse for them and their gods to keep this property in their possession, right? Let's continue though. And let's get 2 Kings chapter 5, 17 to 18.
You ready?
Yep.
Book of 2 Kings. So that mic is on. Battery dead.
Yep.
Back on. Book of 2 Kings, chapter 5, verse number 17. And Naaman said, shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to the servant 2 mules, burden of the earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Most High.
Go on.
Next slide. And this thing, the Most High pardon thy servant, that when my master goeth into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. When I bow down myself in the house of Rimmon, the Most High pardon the servant and this thing.
Right, so let's get Rimmon. So Rimmon, a Syrian deity, a local representative of Hadad, the god of storm, rain, and thunder. In Syria, this god is called Baal. So another word he goes as, Baal. And as I said, a lot of times, really the deities really the same. Who do the Romans call him? And the Greeks? Jupiter. I think the Romans call him Jupiter. What about the Greeks? Zeus. Thunder, lightning, Zeus. Right? And we don't see Zeus. We see his sons. Right? Thor is the god of thunder. Odin is another form of Zeus. Right? Let's continue. 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 29, and we're going to go 29 to 35.
2 Kings chapter 17, verse 29. Howbeit every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places, which the Samaritans had made, every nation in their cities wherein they dwelt. And the men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima, and the Avites and made Nibhaz and Tartak, And the Sephirites burnt their children in fire to Adremelech, and Adremelech the gods of Seraphim. So they feared the Most High and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of the high places, which sacrificed for them in the houses of the high places. They feared the Most High and served their own gods after the manner of nations whom they carried away from thence. And to this day they do after the former manners. They fear not the Most High, neither do they after their statutes, or after their ordinances, or after the law and commandment which the Most High commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel, with whom the Most High had made a covenant, and charged them, saying, Ye shall not fear other gods, nor bow yourselves to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. But the Most High, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt with great power, and a stretched out arm, him shall ye fear, and him shall ye worship, and to him shall ye do sacrifice. And the statutes and the ordinances and the law and the commandment which is wrote for you, ye shall observe to do forevermore, and ye shall not fear other gods.
All right, so let's get some of these gods, and let's get Sakkat-Benoth.
Sakkat-Benoth, a Babylonian deity, one of the deities brought to the former kingdom of Samaria by the men of Israel after the exile of Canaan by Assyria. According to the Talmud, Sakkat-Benoth was represented with a hen and her chicks, thus associating this god with the astrological constellation Pleiades.
All right, so today he goes by the name Pleiades, right? Let's get another one. Let's get the next one. Nergal or Nergal.
Nergal, theophoric element found in the personal name Nergal Shazer. He was the god of pestilence, disease, and various calamities, who could be appeased by incantations. He was worshipped with consort Erskine at court center of Kutha of Babylon. Temples at northeast Babylon, I guess that is. Temple at various other sites, Larsa, Insen, Assur, were dictated of him. Nergal was worshipped by men of Kuth after being settled in the province of Samaria by the Assyrians.
All right. Let's get Ashima.
Ashima was a West Semitic goddess of fate related to the Akkadian goddess Shemiti, who was a goddess in her own right, but also a title of other goddesses such as Damkina and Istar. Damkina, for example, was titled, but not Shemiti.
Right. Now, a lot of these names are sort of stuff that we would, to really see how they're being embedded in society, we would kind of have to see the practices, see the cults, and a study that really and truly we don't really need to be doing. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll give you one example. All of us, we know about Anansi, right? We grew up with Anansi. You know Anansi's a god? You didn't know that, huh?
Anansi.
So Anansi, the African stories we used to get with Anansi and whatnot? Anansi was a deity. Right? So I'm just showing you how every society repackaged them and has another story or form that they come into. But if you check the history of Anansi, and I said, you know where I saw this? Where I first stumbled on this? American Gods. Right? So in that show, Anansi's the one telling you all the stories. But he's telling you he's a god too, being worshipped.
Anansi or
Anansi. I'm not going to pick on Judah right now. Judah didn't get the Anansi stories. They never got the Anansi stories.
I didn't say Anansi at first. What?
Yes.
Okay.
Right? So that was actually a deity in ancient times. Right? Let's continue and let's bring this to a close. I think we got two. Okay. Let's get a few more. Let's get a few more.
Tartak. Let's see what this guy. Is the one before him?
Let's just get Tartak.
Let's get Tartak, an idol set up in Samaria by the Avids when Sargon, king of Assyria, settled them there after 722 BC. A deity with this name is not known in Assyrian religion. It is possible that the word is a corruption of Atargatis, a goddess worshipped in Mesopotamia. The Azites brought with them another idol, Nibhaz, who was apparently worshipped in the form of an ass or donkey. Adremelech, like many pagan gods, Adremelech is considered a demon in some Judeo-Christian traditions. So he appears in Milton's Paradise Lost, where he is a fallen angel who, along with Asmodeus, is vanquished by Uriel and Raphael. According to the Colin de Plancy's book on demonology, Infernal Dictionary, Adremelech became the president of the Senate of the demons. He is also the chancellor of hell and supervisor of Satan's wardrobe. He is generally depicted with a human torso, a mule's head, peacock.
Yeah.
If you take out ADR, it's Amalek. Adramelech.
You're always looking deeper into the words. You even got me with the Beliar?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the offsprings, right? But let's continue.
You got Anamelech now. According to the Hebrew Bible, was a Syrian and a Mesopotamian goddess worshipped alongside Adremelech. She is a lunar deity and is said to have been worshipped at Sepharvaim, an Assyrian town. She is possibly the daughter of Anu, as her name means Anu is king.
All right. So, in the 8th century BC, Most High exiled the northern kingdom out of the land of Canaan. And at that same time, the southern kingdom was under the captivity of the Babylonian Assyrian Empire, with Israel no longer in the land of the Most High promised them. The Gentiles came into the land and brought their gods, along with the practice and customs of their gods. The Antediluvians gods were flourished post-flood, and like Enoch told us, the angels, taking many forms, would deceive mankind into serving their Nephilim children, the demons, as gods. All right, let's get Deuteronomy 28:63, and then we will close off with Psalms.
Bring it down, Deuteronomy. All right, book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 63. And it shall come to pass that as the Most High rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so that the Most High will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to naught, and ye shall be plucked from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. And the Most High shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone.
All right, let's get Luke chapter 16, verse 13.
No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. He cannot serve God and mammon.
1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 21. And really and truly, what Christ is saying there is no different than what Paul's saying, no different than what Joshua was saying, where it's saying, you got to choose one. But you can't sit at both tables, right? And in fact, these spirits will deceive you to make you think that you can. But the God we deal with, he's a jealous God. Go on.
1 Corinthians 10:21. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of tables of devils. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy?
Right? So do we provoke the Most High to jealousy? Are we really going to test him with this? Right? We see that those that tried it in the past, it didn't fall too well. It didn't fare too well, should I say. Right? Go on.
Are we stronger than he?
Are we stronger than he? Answer is no. Let's get Psalm chapter 86.
5 to 12. Psalms 86, 5 to 12. Or 13, Slakia. For thou, Most High, art good, and ready to forgive, and plenteous in mercy unto all them that call upon thee. Give ear, Most High, unto my prayer, and attend to the voice of my supplications. In the day of my trouble I will call upon thee, for thou wilt answer me. Among the gods there is none like unto thee, O Most High, neither are there any works like unto thy works. All nations whom thou hast made shall come and worship before thee, O Most High, and shall glorify thy name, Ahia.
Right? Read that again, because there's some people that say, you know what, they can't come. Only Israel needs to come to serve the true living God.
All nations whom thou hast made shall come and worship before thee, O Most High, and shall glorify thy name, Ahia.
Right? So it's going to come a time where the Most High is going to remove the angels that were set over them to lead them astray. And they're going to realize that their fathers told them lies and come to serve the true living God. Right? This is what's written. This is what's prophesied. Go on.
For thou art great and dost wondrous things. Thou art the Most High alone, God alone. Teach me thy way, O Most High. I will walk in thy truth. Unite my heart to fear thy name. I will praise thee, O Most High, my power, with all my heart, and I will glorify thy name forevermore, Ahia. For great is thy mercy toward me. Thou hast delivered my soul from the lowest hell.
Right? And that's what the Most High did for us. Right? He delivered our soul out of all of this confusion. And when you think about it, think about it. You got the angels and their children before the flood. Then you got the 70 other angels who to deceive the nations. Then you got the nations. Not to mention the demons that came from the angels before the flood. You got all these guys against us. And really and truly, if it wasn't for the Most High, we clearly would have been taken out a long time ago. We would have been like Sodom and Gomorrah. Because all these things, and I think the Testament of Levi tells you that all these spirits are looking to attack Israel. So even though they attack all mankind, their primary focus is Israel. And that's why I say to myself, because in the beginning, between Satan and the woman, it says, the woman's seed would be at variance with the serpent's seed. Right? But it said how the serpent would go on his belly, and what would be his food? What would be the serpent's food? The dust of the earth. And a lot of people, you hear some people that don't understand it and be like, well, I never saw a serpent who eats dust. How simple-minded. But what they don't understand, or what they fail to remember, because they do understand this, who was made out of the dust? Man. So Satan's food supply would be men. That's the dust he likes to eat. And if you're looking at his trend, it seems like he has an appetite for Israelites. Because when we look at the men who's dying in the earth, it's majority, it's us. So we see, if you look at it that perspective, you see, we can see the agenda against us. Now we understand it from the spiritual realm. But when we just look at the fruits of who's dying in high numbers in these communities worldwide, it's us. And if it ain't killing us, it's incarcerating us. And if it ain't incarcerating us, it's other tactics. This warfare is on so many different levels. There's the spiritual side, so they come in and they bring in their gods. Right? Then there's the social engineering side. But at the end of the day, the goal is still the same. Destroy and get these demons to torment them. Make their life a living hell. And that's the game. So with that being said, family, let me read this. I read this already?
No, read it.
Let me read it now, right? So part of our curse would be that the Most High would uproot us out of our land and scatter us to the four corners of the earth to serve wood and stone, idol gods of the Gentiles. We would have been groomed in the ways of these gods, showing you we were put under these princes, and not the ways of the Most High. There is more to come on this subject, as we've just scratching this, the surface, when it comes to the gods of the nations being idols. More than ever, it is important that we study to show ourselves approved, receive baptism of Christ, while continuing to stay cleansed by the word, so we can make certain that we are complying with the ways of the Most High, serving Him, and not the ways of pagan gods serving them. That being said, family, Shabbat Shalom.